What's going on, everyone? So another day, which means we have a lot of spoilers to go over, and this is really focused on the Mandalorians and upgrade synergies. Last time we had a lot of Wookiee synergies and of course just some new leaders and things like that, but today it's really focused on the upgrade deck. And honestly, there are a few things in this spoiler bunch that really make me believe that the upgrade deck can be a real thing and a real threat. But let's get started here. Start off with Prisla. This card looks sweet. It's a 7-statted or a 7-costed ground unit in aggression villainy. It's an 8/7 Mandalorian trooper. When played or on attack, you may pay the cost of an upgrade attached to another non-vehicle unit. If you do, take control of that upgrade and attach it to Prisla. If able, if you can't, you can defeat it instead. This is really, really strong. First off, let's talk about the stat line. It's an 8/7 for 7. This is actually a really solid stat line and better than what I would have normally expected, definitely above average in terms of stats. If you look at a lot of the other kind of units around this stat range, usually what ends up happening is they have a really powerful effect, which makes their stats lower. Look at Darth Vader, who's a 5/7 stat line, but you get a second body and you get the ambush. If you look at things like Reinforcement Walker, which comes down a turn later, well, it's a 6/9, so you're actually getting, well, just about the same amount of stats. And come on, camera, come back to me. Same amount of stats, but they're more defensively focused. This is much more aggressively statted, and that's really, really important because from what we see to the upgrade deck, it looks to be a more aggressively slanted deck. Now, here's the thing with this. You might look at this and be like, oh, we can't get any value on this when we play it, right? We play it on turn 6. We have no resources open. We can't pay the cost of an upgrade attached to another unit, right? Most of the time, that's going to be the case. However, you could actually take shield tokens and experience tokens from your opponent's units. Remember, if we just pull up, I actually have the Star Wars card list pulled up here just to show you all, because I've had this discussion with people in the past who actually didn't realize that these tokens were upgrades, but you could defeat these with things like disabling Fang Fighter. They're 0 costed, they actually have a cost, and they are token upgrades, okay? So if we pop back over to Prisla here, what we could do is play this, pay 0, and pay that cost, which is whatever is attached to whatever unit, and then move that shield token or experience token over to Prisla. So we're looking at an 8/7 shielded or a 9/8 to attack on the following turn. That's pretty good, right? That's a solid stat line. It's a solid unit overall. That's really nice. You can at least get some value when it comes down if your opponent's playing any sort of experience tokens or shield tokens in their deck, which normally that's pretty common, especially with this second set. It looks like it's going to be more common. But let's talk about the best case scenario. You play this and you steal your opponent's Darksaber, right? You play this, you attack, and you get to pay the 4, take their Darksaber, attach it to Prisla, and boom, suddenly you're rolling around with a 12/10. That's absurd. This really starts to shine in the upgrade mirror. Now, remember, it's on attack, so you're going to have that upgrade when you finish the attack, but you're not going to get any on attack triggers because you've already attacked. So let's say you wanted to get the on attack trigger with Darksaber, you're not going to get it because you've already attacked with it. So keep this in mind when you're going about and trying to steal opponents' upgrades. But I think this is going to be a card that really will be the mirror breaker in a lot of scenarios, right? Trying to steal certain upgrades from your opponent and getting a ton of value with it. I'm pretty excited about this, but I don't know if it's actually like an extremely powerful card outside of that. If you're looking at this and you're just playing this as a top end threat in your upgrade deck, realistically, your opponents probably won't have a ton of upgrades to steal unless they are, again, focused on that. You might get the stray experience token or shield token, as I mentioned, right? But generally speaking, this ability is not going to be relevant unless you wanted to move things around from your own units, but you have to pay things to do that. So I'm not really seeing that as being a powerful mechanic. And there is another upside that we have to mention. If you're playing with like Saxon, for example, which gives you upgraded units or your upgraded units more power. If you steal an experience token or a shield token, you also get the +1 power from Saxon as well. So there are a lot of different minor synergies that can add up to this card being pretty powerful. Again, the thing that I'm really looking at is the mirror breaker, and maybe if there's enough experience tokens or shield tokens that a 9/8 for 7 resources or an 8/7 shielded for 7 resources is just good enough. And that is certainly possible. So I'm definitely not like super high on this card, but I see some pretty big potential and I'm really excited to play with it. Next up, we have Fenra. This is a 6-costed ground unit in Vigilance. It's a 5/6 Mandalorian. When played, you may play an upgrade from your hand. It costs 2 less. And when you play an upgrade on this unit, give an enemy unit -2/-2 for this phase. So check this one out. We have a 6 costed 5/6, which, to be fair, is a little bit below average. There are sub 6 costed that are worse, of course, but when you're looking at a 6 costed unit, I'm liking a 6/6 is generally what I want to see. But in terms of the stat line, it's okay. It's not the worst. And it has some really powerful effects, again, in the upgrade deck. What I like about this is the fact that you can potentially immediately upgrade this when it comes down. Think about like Luke's lightsaber, for example. Not that you're going to play Luke's lightsaber. You might, but you could immediately play a Luke's lightsaber on Fenra the turn that Fenra comes down. That's great. It's an 8/7, and it's going to be upgraded, which means, who knows, you might be able to go ahead and get other synergies going on, like another +1/+0 from Saxon. So now it's a 9/7, and you're going to give something -2/-2. Now, this is the key part. If you play upgrades on this, you could start picking off opponents' units or just shrinking them down. And there are probably going to be turns where you could play multiple upgrades on this and actually kill an opponent's unit. And that, to me, seems a lot more powerful for this card, right? Suiting up one card and just absolutely decimating your opponent's board or giving you some really nice value trades is really appealing to me. Now, it is only -2/-2, and if you play with Darth Vader, for example, as a leader, he deals 2 damage on attacks. Generally speaking, that 2 damage, well, nice. It's not extremely relevant most of the time, right? In some matchups, it could be better if you're against more aggressively statted decks or aggressively positioned decks. This could be really nice. The extra 2 damage. It's not damage. It's -2/-2, so it doesn't last permanently. But the actual -2/-2 can be even more important because maybe you're using this as a way to stall out your opponent's damage, or maybe you're using this as a way for your opponents to be unable to kill certain units that you have on the battlefield. I really like this, and this is the type of stuff that I'm looking for when I'm looking at my upgrade units. I want something that doesn't just get power and toughness, because that doesn't fix the problem that upgrade decks have, which is if you deal with this one unit, you lose everything attached to it. If you're able to get some sort of effect on the board, some sort of effect drawing cards, getting replacements, or, progressing your game plan in terms of resources, that's what I'm looking for. And so I'm excited to see maybe more cards like Fenra here. Next up, we have House Cast Soldier. And this one looks a little bit kind of unassuming, right? It's a 2-costed aggression ground unit, 2/3 Mandalorian Trooper. A couple of important tags here. Mandalorian tag, the Trooper tag. Trooper tag is also really important for any sort of Trooper synergies like General Tag, for example. But this one has Saboteur. So it's basically your Rebel Pathfinder, but for your Mandalorian or Trooper decks, but also in aggression. The reason why this card, to me, is appealing is because we have specific Mandalorian and we have specific Trooper-themed decks. And if we're going to be playing these kind of synergy decks, some of the most important pieces of those decks are the 2 resource plays and the 3 resource plays. Yes, you have your bombs. Yes, you have your really important threats, like, for example, Prisla. Those decks don't function unless you have enough filler pieces to make the curve go well. And House Cast Soldier is doing exactly that. You have a perfectly reasonable statted unit as a 2/3 that's going to get you in some damage or set up potential plays. And that's exactly what Rebel Pathfinder does, right? A lot of those decks, they play Rebel Pathfinder to make sure their curve is consistently solid, just like Alliance X-Wing. These cards are pretty important, and House Cast Soldier being added to the cast for the Mandalorian crew is pretty important so that we can go ahead and have a consistent curve. Next up, we have Brutal Traditions, and this is one of the cards that I'm really excited about because it is a way to kind of bypass the downside of upgrade decks to some degree. It is a 2 resource upgrade in Vigilance Villainy. It is a +1/+2 upgrade, and it has an action. If an enemy unit was defeated this phase, you may play this upgrade from your discard pile, paying its cost. Remember, this action is permanently there if it's in your discard pile. You don't have to do this the turn this gets defeated or whatever, or an enemy unit gets defeated. You can wait to the next turn and then defeat another enemy unit and then action this. The reason why this is interesting to me is one of the big things about the upgrade deck is that you don't need powerful upgrades. You just need upgrades for your deck to function, right? You don't need something like Darksaber or Boba Fett's armor or Jedi lightsaber, those types of quality cards where the upgrade is doing most of the work. If you're building an upgrade themed deck, with Gar Saxon, with Fenra, all you want is upgrades to trigger all the different effects and the synergies that are going on. Not to say that having a better upgrade is bad or anything. This is a pretty weak in terms of statted upgrades, right? It's a 1+1/+2 buff. That's not really that powerful, but it's repeatable. It gets around things like removal because you're able to go ahead and play it from your discard pile even after that unit with it might get defeated. The one downside is that an enemy unit has to have been defeated that turn. And I do think that's a pretty big downside. But the thing I'm excited about is if we see more cards like this, the idea that we can recur our upgrades or kind of mitigate the downsides of playing those upgrade decks, I think that this sets up the upgrade decks to be more powerful and be something that we can actually play rather than just getting absolutely run over by whatever it is that we're fighting against. And lastly, we have one more unit to talk about, again, in the Mandalorian upgrade theme. It is a 6-costed space unit, Clan Saxon Gauntlet. It is a Vigilance Villainy space unit with a 4/5 stat line Mandalorian vehicle transport. It has Sentinel, and it has, when this unit is attacked, you may give an experience token to a unit. And it references before damage is dealt, but that is kind of in the wording when this unit is attacked, not when this unit is dealt damage, right? So you attack into the Sentinel, you give an experience token, you can give it to any unit you choose, which means this is a 5/6 on defenses for Sentinel purposes, and potentially even more, because you're going to be playing this most likely in an upgrade themed deck. This unit is pretty interesting. I like it, but it's mainly a defensive unit, and that's the one downside. So with the upgrade deck, as I mentioned earlier on in the video, it seems to more be aggressively focused, right? Playing upgrades proactively, getting your power buffs, getting whatever you're trying to do, and outstatting your opponent. This doesn't do anything if you're not being attacked. You're just played a 6-resource 4/5 space unit, which isn't the worst, by the way, but in space, I'm looking for like a 5/5 is what I'm really kind of excited about. If you look at some of the stat lines, for example, you play a 4-resource System Patrol Craft as a 3/4 Sentinel. This gives you 1 more power and 1 more toughness, but it's 2 additional costs. Yes, it's way better on defense, but again, if you're playing an aggressive deck, you don't care about that factor most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time, that's not going to be relevant. It is nice that when you do get attacked, you get an upgrade, right? And it doesn't have to be on the Gauntlet, as I mentioned. It can be on any unit. So you can trigger any upgrade units, upgrade synergies that you might have. So that is kind of nice. I think this is decently weak, to be fair. Again, if the deck is more aggressively focused, this is not going to be a card that you're really going to be wanting putting in your deck, right? But if it's more defensive or mid-rangey, I could see playing maybe a couple copies of this to try to combat things like Fet's Fire Spray. Remember, let's say you have a Fet's Fire Spray on the battlefield, and you play a Clan Saxon Gauntlet after they try to play a Fet's Fire Spray, which is a card that I think is going to be still meta. They go ahead and try to attack into your Clan Saxon Gauntlet. You give an upgrade to Clan Saxon Gauntlet. Let's say you're playing Gar Saxon as your leader. Boom, it's a 6/6. Boom, it just kills Fet's Fire Spray straight up, and you're left with a 6/1. That's really powerful. So yes, there are situations where I could see this being powerful. I think on average, it's not that powerful, but in that specific scenario where you're being a more defensive deck and you're trying to out kind of mid-range your opponent or get to the later stage of the game where you can leverage all your more powerful upgrades or recur your upgrades or whatever you're trying to do, this becomes a card that I'm going to want in that deck, and I could see it doing some major work. The fact that it automatically trades with a Fet's Fire Spray, or actually beats a Fet's Fire Spray on defense, is pretty appealing to me. So there's also another way where you just attack into their base and then use it as a defensive unit. So you're getting in for damage, and then your opponent doesn't really want to hit them with the Fet's Fire Spray because they know it's going to die. So there are a lot of different kind of minute synergies with this. So I do think it has potential. I just think on average, you're probably not going to be wanting a 4/5 for 6. That said, as I mentioned, a lot of upgrade Mandalorian themed synergies coming out. And I think that the deck is really starting to take shape. We have a lot of specific synergies. We have the leader in Gar Saxon. We also have Mandalorian, the Mandalorian, I should specifically say. But this seems to be leaning towards Gar Saxon because of the villainy aspects, right? Like Prisla isn't going to be playing a Mandalorian almost assuredly. Neither is Brutal Traditions or Clan Saxon Gauntlet, as those are just far too expensive for the price. Fenra and Housecast Soldier, maybe they're played in other decks. This can work in a Bo-Katan deck. Same with Fenra. I could see that being very, very prominent. It really just kind of is giving us pieces for the Mandalorian deck that I don't think was really flushed out yet. And we're starting to see some pretty nice synergies for it. So I'm pretty excited, and the set is coming closer and closer by the day. So hopefully you all are excited as well. Let me know what you think about Mandalorians and the upgrade deck. Is this more appealing to you? Are you more excited about the upgrade theme deck than you were before? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all for the next one.